All right, folks, we're back at it with our latest New York Metropolitan Big Mets update segment. This was recorded during our live post-game segment that I posted the next day after the fact, more than likely, here for you guys to see, because you probably maybe didn't check out the post-game because only so many Mets fans care about a Mets-Marlins matchup right now, but you do care about all the latest news, rumors, everything going on there, and that's what we have to cover here because we have a lot to get into on Brett Baty, David Stearns' presser, the big takeaways from that, and how the Mets are currently viewing the GM position, and more, some awesome updates on Starling Marte, Nunez, and others, and Kodai Senga. Let's break them down. And it starts here with Brett Baty. Brett Baty, over this past night, just had another massive game there at the AAA level. Baty with a 2-home run game, 250 average, 850 or so OPS on the season at the AAA level. Baty, who obviously isn't hitting for tremendous contact that we have seen, cooled off quite a bit after a roaring hot start after being sent back down, since Mark Vientos has really carried the way, rightfully so, at the hot corner, being the Mets' 2-hole hitter now and having around 900 OPS at the MLB level. We're not complaining, Mets fans, with Mark Vientos. But Brett Baty, he knows that the Mets will have an opportunity to potentially call him up soon as the rosters expand in the coming weeks. And as that is going to happen, the Mets are going to have some key decisions on both the pitching end and the offensive end, right? Because there are guys that have been standing out, and Jackie Bradley Jr. as of late, and Eddie Rosario, who they just signed. Not so much on the standout, but rather an MLB caliber bat who has had playoff success, a playoff MVP from 2021 with the Braves, so he knows what it takes to win, but he just has not been that guy, has not had a good eye at the plate whatsoever this season. And DJ Stewart as well, who the Mets had earlier this year, who had some big hits, some big bombs for them for sure. Now enter Brett Baty, and what does Baty have pretty much better than anyone else? It is the ability to play multiple infield positions, as he's been getting plenty reps at second base at the AAA level, and he's been perfectly fine in doing so. He commands himself at the hot corner, so if there are times that maybe you want to consider having Mark Vientos shift to either, say, the DH position, or you do pull him from the game late, early, a little premature because, say, the defense was really bad, or because the Mets are having such a blowout lead that you can warrant maybe looking for more defense in Brett Baty, in which he was very superior at the hot corner that we saw this season. Brett Baty, now the big question I have for each and every you guys watching this live at a replay is it time for Brett Baty to be called up? Because it really feels like Baty might just be that guy chosen by David Stearns and the Mets that we're going to see here when they call up at least one offensive player and one pitcher at minimum once rosters expand. If you're wondering, Wardy, doesn't make at all any sense to bring up someone here and Brett Baty. It does if you understand the context behind it here, because Baty is a guy that has defensive versatility better even that you could argue than a Jackie Bradley Jr., then a JBJ, then a DJ Stewart, then a Eddie Rosario, because those guys are all outfielders, corner outfielders that all don't profile well defensively outside of JBJ for the most part, and we all know what you're going to pretty much get offensively from those guys, whereas Baty, we all know he has the untapped potential, but can he find consistency at the major league level? I don't think the Mets are going to have Baty be a consistent player for the Mets at any point this season, barring injuries or barring crazy things that may happen from now until the end of the season. But what I do believe is that with Baty's continued progress that we've seen at the AAA level, that is going to help warrant the Mets in having a tough decision to make to warrant bringing him up. And again, this is one of those guys that has infield versatility versus all those outfield options. Last time I checked with Starling Marte inevitably coming back, that we're going to transition into in just a couple minutes here in this video, I can tell you that between Marte, Tyrone Taylor, Brandon Nimmo, Jesse Winker, the list goes on and on. There's at least one more outfield option that I'm not even talking about right now, and Harrison Bader maybe, or if I didn't say that already. The Mets are covered on the outfield option. They have 5 guys that can actively play the outfield for them when Starling Marte is with the team when Ben Gamble is inevitably DFA'd, sent down. So when you look at the outfield configuration, you know what you have there. So it's all down to the infield configuration. And outside of Jose Iglesias, the Mets don't have another guy that can come in fairly comfortably at third base and at second base. So even if you're going to platoon him, I say why not? Because it makes all the sense in the world to consider that option off the bench, that lefty bat option, while also getting some reps maybe later in the game should you call upon him. Brett Baty, is it now the time for him to be the man selected when the Mets expand their rosters? It's feeling more and more like a reality. I'm really curious to see where you guys stand in the comments about exactly that, so let it rip with those. But now let's get into some key updates on David Stearns, because as many of you guys saw, David Stearns had a pregame presser that we saw from the Mets prior to their 7-3 victory in Game 1 of a 3-game set there against the Miami Marlins. And David Stearns also had plenty key quotes to say. And let's now get into all those. All right, folks, I'm going to run a couple key quotes from I'm going to run a couple key quotes from David Stearns' presser today, and then we will go from there. And this is David Stearns talks about the control issues the Mets pitchers have had this season. Talk a little bit about that. We're also going to get into the idea of potentially calling up Brandon Sproat or Luis Angel Acuna this season, Kodai, Senga, and a bit others that we will talk about as well. So listen up. Let's hear what Mr. David Stearns, Mets Pobo, has to say about the following.
David, obviously, especially coming off yesterday, there's a lot of talk about the number of walks that you guys have given up this season. As you look at it, why do you think that has been such an issue overall?
I think whenever you have struggles like that in a particular area of team, it's not one issue. It's probably a variety of things, at times trying to be a little bit too perfect, probably at times losing track of situation in the game. And look, at times it's that 50-50 call that's not going your way. Regardless of the reasons, we can't walk that many guys. You can't consistently win baseball games with that many free passes. We know that. We've been working to address it, but we need to be better.
Well, I appreciate you being honest there, David, because you're preaching what we're all saying. We all know the Mets need to be better. They haven't been better. And my big concern with this is simply the following. This is a Mets team that has consistently walked batters more than any other team in the National League all season long. Why am I supposed to believe that now down the stretch of the season that that's going to waver, especially with pressure and expectations higher than ever before this season? Enlighten me on how they're going to get better. This was a great start, only walking 2 batters. The first batter Sean Manaea faced and one of the final batters Jose Butto faced. They're in the 9th inning in their 7-3 victory. That's a great start, but there needs to be consistency there, because if there's no consistency, there's no foundation. And if there's no foundation, there's nothing to hold this pen together and this pitching staff, and that would be a clear problem. So that's the latest there on Stearns when talking about walks. Now let's talk a bit on the idea of Luis Angel Acuna and Brandon Sproat.
I realize that we're in the middle of August, but we're not going to see you again until September. So the issue of September call-ups, do you see someone like Brandon Sproat, potentially maybe even Luis Angel Acuna, who's been doing pretty well in AAA, maybe getting an opportunity up here?
I don't think I'd take anything off the table at this point. I think September call-ups is a little bit of a different animal now than it was a couple of years ago. It's a 2-player expansion, 1 position player, 1 pitcher. So it's not quite as robust as it was, and really those calls are going to be made by what the team need is at that particular point in time. And clearly your roster isn't frozen in September, so it's highly likely that whoever we call up on September 1st, those positions could rotate as we get through the month of September.
I realize that we're in the middle of August, but we're not going to see you again.
Stearns, when talking a bit more on Brandon Sproat and his season in particular, this is specifically what I want you guys to hear more than that previous segment, because I think it's important.
From another Sproat one, just big picture, what have you thought about his season, and what more do you want to see from him?
I think he's had about as good a minor league season as you can possibly have. I think he's thrown more strikes. He's rounded out his arsenal. He's improved his changeup. I mean, he's competed at a very high level, very consistently. He's bounced back from the occasional rough outing. So we've been very pleased with his development this year. He just needs experience. Like this is still a very new player to professional baseball, and he has moved very rapidly through our system, and he has earned that, and he deserves that. But I think we need to make sure that he also dominates the level he's at now before we really start talking about what comes next.
Why is that important, you might wonder? Well, this kind of answers the question some Mets fans, including myself, had to a degree as to, okay, if we're going to have Brandon Sproat called up to the AAA level, when, mind you, competition throughout the minor leagues is usually most difficult at the AA level versus AAA, because AA typically has more of the top prospects and will be pipeline per top 100 each year. And those are guys that are usually thriving, and a lot of them actually get the call all the way from AA to the bigs. If not, they'll have a short stint in AAA, where we have seen with certain Mets batters in years past, including Brett Baty, because, mind you, up until the season, Baty hasn't had much of a sample size at the AAA level. He's been great when he's been there, but it's been not even been like not even close to a full season. So I think hearing David Stearns finally say himself that we need to see him dominate at the AAA level before considering moving forward is exactly what all fans need to hear to kind of answer themselves. Will Brandon Sproat be called up? Will he be a guy that they consider? Yes, they will consider him, but it will become far more of a reality if he showcases himself the way that he plans to at the AAA level. Throughout Sproat's first 2 starts, he has been unable to do so. Fastball looked flat. Again, it's electric, it's lively, but the shape of the fastball, there is a little bit of a concern level there. Just right now, for a guy in his first year pro ball, there's no concern with the way he's been dominating. But in the sense of really, when you get to major league pitching, that's where they're going to pounce and take advantage of. While it's a lively fastball, it's a very fast one that touching 102, it's flat at times. And between that and the slider needing some adjustments for sure. Then we saw his first start, he gave up 6 runs over 4 innings. That was like all in 1 inning though, where he just absolutely couldn't utilize his secondary pitches at all. He really labored there. Then we saw Sproat in his second start a couple days ago be ejected from the ball game, arguing with the ump on balls and strikes on the call. And the manager for the Syracuse Mets was thrown out of the game, ejected in that inning as well. Sproat had given up 1 run, 2 hits, and at least 1 walk in 3 innings throughout that span. But the fastball average velo was up throughout those 3 innings versus his first start, and he will look to continue to do damage and hopefully have his first quality start at the AAA level next time he's out there on the bump. So that's the latest there on Brandon Sproat, because I know we've had a lot of Mets fans that would love to see him considered and called up this season, and I definitely see the appeal to potentially having Brandon Sproat as an electric arm in your bullpen that you may consider. If not, if you want to stretch him out as a starter, I think reliever makes more sense for him in the interim, as long as he's fine with that. Sproat already said anything to get me to the bigs is what I'm down with, so he's not complaining there. But I think we're all in kind of agreement where we would love to see Brandon Sproat. Just want to make sure you don't rush him when he's ready. So once we see hopefully a solid start from him, another solid start or 2, then the Mets may go from there. But for the time being, Brandon Sproat is not going to be called upon for the Mets, at least over the next week or 2, unless something really, really changes in a short period. Say he has like a no-no his next start, then maybe we're talking. Until then, it's a different conversation. So that's the latest there on Brandon Sproat, everybody. And that's pretty much the latest on the key takeaways from David Stearns today. Nothing too notable for sure. So let me leave you with some key updates on the following in Starling Marte, Nunez, and Kodai Senga. Because Kodai Senga, who he did touch on briefly, did say that Kodai Senga could be healthy enough to return to the Mets, thankfully, in playoffs. And this could be massive for the Mets should they make postseason play. Because imagine having a healthy Kodai Senga who doesn't have mechanical issues with his arm or anything like that right now, just because of the unfortunate leg injury he had in his first start back. Let's not forget Kodai Senga's brilliant outing there, dominating after giving up the runs that he did against the Braves. He struck it out at least 9, I believe. Kodai Senga looked like prime Kodai Senga in his 1 start with the Mets this season. And I firmly believe that the next time that he toes the rubber for the Mets, we're going to see more of the same. He wasn't even walking everyone and their mother that you kind of expect in a rusty maybe first start back. No, Kodai came back and he carved up, and he's already getting set to start to pitch soon, which is great. We're going to see Senga hopefully up and throwing the next week to 10 days. Mind you, Senga is done for the regular season. He's not going to return to the Mets this season, but this is all proper build up and ramp up to hopefully have him ready for postseason play should the Mets find themselves in said category. Is it a little bit of wishful thinking for the Mets to not only make playoffs, but to have their ace back in doing so? Absolutely. That goes without saying. But it's always a good sign to hear Kodai Senga is progressing well from his injury, and the Mets need to make sure that they don't rush him in this situation, but hopefully have him ready to go when he is set. So that's the latest on Kodai Senga. Now on Starling Marte. Yes, Starling will be returning the Mets pretty much as soon as humanly possible, everybody. In case you're wondering just how soon could Starling Marte return to the Mets, it could be as soon as this Sunday. Yes, you heard that correctly. According to the Mets and Carlos Mendoza, he could return as soon as this Sunday. Marte has played in back-to-back games at the AAA level this week. That was pretty much the last big test that the Mets had for Marte before calling upon him. This is the same Starling Marte who's been out of Mets baseball since really the end of June there. So to have Marte back in this lineup could be absolutely vital for this Mets team for multiple reasons. And one of the key ones is with the Mets having a lack of consistency on their offense that we have seen post All-Star break, post-trade deadline especially, having Marte, who has been a fantastic high-contact hitter this season, would do wonders to help lengthen the lineup that's already very deep when guys are firing on all full cylinders as is. Yes, Marte's defense is a liability. We all know that. I'm not looking forward to seeing him play defense again, but I am looking forward to seeing that lineup implementation and many having a good problem to work with, meaning that you can be very creative on matchups with Marte, with Winker, and then you add in Bader, Taylor, Nimmo. That is an awesome 5 outfielder configuration, and you at least have enough solid defenders there in the top 3 in Nimmo, Taylor, and Baty that if you have to replace them later in the game for defense, you can certainly do that pretty often. Marte, who has been fantastic for the Mets in clutch situations, high leverage, 2-out hitting, runners in scoring position. He's been batting 300, 400 even in some scenarios, north of 1,000 OPS, if not 1,000. Marte has been that guy when called upon for the Mets on the offensive end this season, and really was in a lot of cases where the Mets collectively as a whole were not hitting at all earlier this year. Marte has missed out on the big party that we saw transpire not only the remainder of June, but heading into what was a joyful July. Now let's see if Starling Marte can add some more oomph into this Mets lineup upon his arrival, which may begin as soon as this Sunday. Nunez, the Mets' unbelievably reliable reliever that no one expected heading into the season. I believe the 28-year-old right-hander who was actually picked up by the San Francisco Giants in the Rule 5 draft in 2020, but because of 2020 the situations, he ended up not staying with the Giants, so he goes back to the Mets. Nunez with a lively fastball sitting 97, 98, touching 99, and then you have that slider high 80s, again like a little mini version of Edwin Diaz there. Nunez, who's been brilliant as a setup option, a multi-inning relief option like Jose Budo, for example, will be back with the Mets sooner than later as he continues his positive ramp up. The latest on Nunez, to be exact, is the following, folks. As Nunez is looking good, he felt good enough as he jumped into facing live hitters again, is on track to begin a rehab assignment soon. The right-hander, threw 20 pitches this Friday, and said he feels healthy and that his next step is likely rehab appearances. Nunez can return to the Mets sooner rather than later, and I will not be shocked if the Mets do call upon him when they can expand rosters, if not sooner. Would I like him to be returning sooner than that? Absolutely. I'd imagine that we're going to probably have at least a week, if not a week and a half worth of Nunez having rehab outings before the Mets call upon him, but everything is continuing to step in the right direction for the rookie right-hander who has posted a 2.3 ERA this season, a sub-1 whip, and 33.1 innings, mind you, with having very strong expected numbers. If you're wondering if that's important and why that is, the reason why expected numbers, expected ERA, SI ERA, all these numbers are important is because they help explain what a pitcher can actually control. In the case of Nunez, what he can control as a pitcher that goes beyond the defense around him is showing that he is that guy. He has been legit, and the Mets might just have themselves one of their best relief options set to return in the coming, over hopefully, fingers crossed, over the next week and a half. So let's see what happens with Nunez. Great updates there. Kodai Senga is continuing to ramp up. A lot of positives in Mets land tonight here at the time of recording this, as you guys are going to watch earlier the next day, this Saturday, and that'll be it for your guy, Wardy. So that's the latest on the Mets update front, everybody. Let me know your big takeaway in the comments down below to my live viewers. Thank you all so much for chiming in, for sticking it out for an hour-plus long post-game live show. If you're watching this on replay, let us know not only your takeaways down below, but make sure you check out our nightly post-game content, the #1 Mets post-game show and channel here on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets themselves. And yes, we are now on all audio platforms. Every single post-game show for the remainder of the season will be uploaded on audio shortly after we are done with it live on the YouTube platform. So check it out wherever you get your audio podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Google, Apple Music, don't matter to me. Just look up WardyNYM. You're going to find your short schmuck boy, which is myself, and we're going to break down some Mets ball games. So see you guys there for our usual coverage, not only on post-game coverage, but on all things Mets. We'll have you covered here each and every day, as we always do here on the platform. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, wherever you get your shows or podcasts. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Have a great one, folks. And Robert with the $5 haul right before I get out of here. Let's see. Need more work on announcing. That's okay, camp. Again, I think I was just too excited and juiced up in the moment to kind of yell more than actually have, a proper articulate way of going about it. So I will definitely have that noted for next time that you ask me to give my own play-by-play. Let's see. Robert with the $5 haul says, had to tune out tonight for mental health reasons, but I'll be at City tomorrow. Couldn't miss the stream, though. Need Senga, Scott, Sprout here ASAP. Robert, I'm so sorry to hear that you've been having some mental health struggles. As someone who has definitely had his fair share of doing so myself, of having said struggles, I can tell you that, I not only commend you for, going out of your way to speak up openly about it, but how much we appreciate it. Speaking up about mental health is one of the most important things that people do not do nearly enough. Thank you so much for letting us know about that. I hope you are doing better than what you were doing earlier today, my friend. So sorry that you weren't able to catch the game, but happy to have you in the post-game segment. Thank you kindly for the donation. I hope you have a fantastic time at tomorrow's game. Go to luck. Saturday games, day games have been a recipe for disaster for the Mets this season. You got to hope that a lesser team in the Miami Marlins makes it a little bit easier for this Mets team to just finally secure a series victory. Robert, thank you once again, my friend. God bless. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.